Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Matthew McQueenie from Conobos, and we will be getting shortly to Kamruz Jaman, also of Conobos, partner and 10-time Sitecore MVP. With the overall marketplace shift towards composable DXP and headless, I probably heard that 10 times a day in 2022, but there's a predictable inclination to focus on these shiny new toys. But for enterprises that often have thousands of employees and years-long roadmaps and have put a fair amount of TCO or total cost of ownership into the solutions they have, they can't move as fast as maybe a startup or will always be in a position to move that fast. So it's been really interesting to put out this event to talk about Sitecore Experience Platform 10.3 and have a lot of the response so far. So I think there's quite an audience ready to hear about it, even though, as Cam will get into, there's potentially not a lot to talk through, but we'll talk about the macro trends of what it means as we all pivot towards the future. So Cam, of course, welcome. Could you just tell us a little bit about XP 10.3? What are the main features updates? But maybe, I know we have another slide specifically for that, but maybe talk about what this slide here says and just the overall kind of announcement on this.
Yeah, I think it was a great announcement. They announced at Sitecore Symposium back in September. Back in October, we were there at Chicago. They announced available today, and they said it was going to be available in a couple of weeks. And finally, it is available today. So you can actually go to the Sitecore portal and download Sitecore 10.3. There are a number of changes. We will discuss like some of the finer points, but as you mentioned, there's a lot of change, a lot of new shiny toys around the composable world, and the composable offering from Sitecore and multiple other vendors. So everybody has been focusing on those a lot, but equally, these releases for existing customers and the existing projects are extremely important. And as you say, the transition away from their existing platforms and existing solutions will not happen overnight. If you just happen to be in the middle of a brand new build or a redesign, then you will probably think about those headless options more than if you have an existing website, an existing set of projects and solutions that you need to support for the immediate future, at least.
And so we will get into those main elements. And you did joke about the fact that it is available today. Just as being on the ground there in Chicago at Symposium, and with all the big announcements with composable and headless, this slide shows they talked about it. But what was the feeling on the ground there, talking to other developers and people at Sitecore, business folks, about 10.3? Was it kind of just something that went quickly onto the other pieces, or what was the feeling about it?
Yeah, it wasn't as big a fanfare as you would traditionally have got for Sitecore XP XM releases at previous symposiums. There was heavy focus on the headless XM cloud, commerce, search, connect. There was lots of big composable headless announcements, and the XP XM release was almost a side piece, but a very welcome side piece. So they did obviously announce that Sitecore 10.3 is going to be released very, very shortly. So it's here now. The other announcement they did make was that Sitecore 10.4 is slated to be released next year. So again, this just shows that there is a commitment to the on-premise solution for the self people who want to continue to self-host, people who have made an investment in this product. You will get that extended support if you upgrade to those latest versions.
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's like enterprise runway to evolve.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we have this here. Why don't you just talk through? We do see the word headless here twice, so there's some introduction here. But if you just want to talk through some of the actual features or fixes that were announced.
Absolutely. So headless SXA is something which is brand new. That was announced for XMXP. We have had Sitecore Experience Accelerator for several years now. It's probably about 6, 7 years that Sitecore has released SXA, but that's been the traditional kind of MVC based release. Headless SXA is brand new offering. It's different from SXA despite the name, but it gives you a lot of the same features. So you can scaffold a headless website, you go with the templating that goes with it. But they built a brand new set of Next.js based, React based components for building your applications rather than using the MVC ones. That will allow you to use it with things like Experience Edge for scaling. You can host it statically on providers such as Vercel and Netlify. It is a much more limited set of components compared to what we had with Next.js. Compared to what we had with traditional SXA. But they've kind of removed all the excess components that weren't really being used, or as they evolved, they're saying, this wasn't how we intended people to use it, or you can kind of do this by doing it a different way. And these components fit more into this kind of modern headless architecture. The other nice thing is it's the same framework that's used for XM Cloud, headless SXA. So in the longer term, if you're using headless SXA, that transition to XM Cloud will be smoother, at least. Headless services, this is just a development, added enhancements to, this is version 21 that's been released. There's some changes around some acceleration frameworks in the background for the creation of new projects. Nothing major, but they do add support for Next.js 12.3 and React 18. So again, just getting all of those frameworks up to the latest and greatest versions. Sitecore embeddable forms is new. This is, for me, this is actually a very welcome change. This is how I would have liked to have seen forms in the first place. So now you can embed forms onto any page. It can be a Sitecore website. It can even be a non-Sitecore website. So more like what you would expect with a SaaS-based forms provider. So if you've ever used Marketo, you just drop in a snippet and the form will magically appear on the website. So that means you can use it on your MVC sites, you can use it on your Next.js sites, you can use it even on your old traditional web forms, ASP.NET web forms websites. It does require headless services to be enabled, but it's if you have that available in your licensing, then it should just work pretty much out of the box. There are some slight differences with how it works with some of the the goal tracking and things like that, just due to the nature of it being headless, essentially. But again, it's a welcome change and a good path forward towards it composable. There have been some minor EXM fixes, bug fixes, and enhancements. You can now use integrated OAuth security in the background, but the majority of it has been around bug fixes and performance improvements on that one. Webhooks and management APIs. This was a big one that was announced at SUGCON at 7 or 8 months ago. This allows you to call external systems when certain events happen within the platform. In the headless SaaS-based systems, we're used to webhooks. An event occurs, an item is created, a publishing event happens, you can call out to an external system. This allows you to just get a bit more modern. You don't have to build custom code now to have all of this functionality. It's how most modern SaaS-based systems are working anyway. And then coupled with the APIs, there's a new set of management APIs and admin APIs. You can now perform actions such as create items, update items. So you could have a Azure function, for example, that's running, pulling in data from an external system. and it can now talk to Sitecore via these APIs to create some items, update some items, run a publish, run a reindex. Before, that would be very much custom code that you have to write to make all of these things happen. This is really, really nice because, again, it's one of these things that will allow you to get your system more modern and more SaaS cloud ready for the future. And the really nice thing about this is it was kind of ported across from Sitecore XM Cloud. It's the same functionality as an XM Cloud, but XM Cloud at its core is Sitecore XM. So it's great that they're trying to keep these platforms at parity, which allows them to kind of develop for both systems simultaneously. And it's not like the traditional on-prem system is going to get left behind at that point.
Yeah, and you can't shake your head at 160 bug fixes, right? I mean, you were telling me about how the bug fixing without big releases can be really difficult as a process, right?
Yeah, so traditionally what used to happen is Sitecore would release Sitecore 8.2, for example, and then they would release Sitecore 8.2 update 1, and then update 2, and then update 3, and update 4. And that's how you would get. Then you'd have several iterations of releases for every single version. And then you'd just be told, hey, upgrade, 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 upgrade each time. But getting all of those bug fixes from Sitecore 10.2 into 10.3 rolled up into this release obviously just makes that upgrade process a lot easier. You know, you have a more stable system. Sitecore has in the background for 10.2, it's available from their knowledge base website. You can download what they call the roll-up bug fixes package. So every bug fix they make now is in this rolled up package, a single package. Whereas traditionally, if you ask for a bug fix, they'd give you one bug fix. If I ask for a bug fix, they'd give me a separate bug fix. And then eventually they try and merge all of these bug fixes together. And sometimes these bug fixes clash and cause another bug, right? So by doing this kind of roll-up package and having a single set of fixes for every customer that they can give, it makes the transition to 10.3 and integrating those a lot easier and a lot smoother.
So this is a lot of good news, but I know you did lose a digital friend here. You want to talk about that?
I did. So the sun has set over the horizon for Sitecore Horizon, unfortunately. 10.2 is the last version that will support Horizon. So if you have been using it, it's not supported on 10.3. I'm not sure how many people have been using it. It was originally announced around 2017, 2018, I want to say, and it's just never really got up to feature parity until quite recently. It was getting really, really close. And I understand the reason for them sunsetting it. The problem has been with these traditional on-prem releases is you can only release once a year, maximum twice a year, along with the main product. Because if there's some changes that need to happen, you need to update the product. So they're transitioning this to something called a SaaS-based solution called Sitecore Pages. It's a front-end as a service. And it's obviously they will have to rebuild a lot of parts of it, but that allows them to iterate and develop and release a lot more quickly. It's a SaaS-based service. You can release new features every week, and customers do not have to update it. They will just auto update. So I understand the direction for it. Hopefully in the future they'll add support for those on-prem customers back into that cloud-based system.
And we're talking about XP 10.3, but Experience Commerce also had a little maintenance update for 10.3. If you want to say a word about that.
Yeah, not much to say. It really is just a maintenance update to make it compatible with Sitecore 10.3. There's really been no new features added. There's been some bug fixes. They've upgraded the framework, the underlying framework, to .NET 6 because the older framework was .NET Core 3.1. That's at the end of life support from Microsoft itself. I know there's a big jump between 3 and 6, but that's just the numbering that went from Microsoft. It's not like they missed 4 and 5 in there. So it is the latest version, latest supported version. The great thing about this, again, is just by having this version bump is it extends that support window. So if you upgrade to 10.3, that support window gets pushed out by another year if you need that mainstream support.
So we've now that we've done some description, let's do a little prescription and kind of strategize what 10.3 to XP 10.3 means for customers. And when we were preparing, we were kind of talking about the right choice versus the right now choice, all of that. But why don't we use this slide here to just talk about the kind of customer that XP 10.3 is for, why a customer would upgrade to XP 10.3. And there's no right or wrong answers, right? But it's just some things from our experience here of how we would answer these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone's situation is obviously very, very different. Everyone is in different parts of their journey, and depending on where you are, you will make different choices. But the kind of customers that will want to upgrade to Sitecore 10.3, the first most obvious one is support. If you require support from Sitecore, from the Sitecore support team, 10.3 will be something you should be looking at, depending on what version you're already on. If you're on Sitecore 10.1, 10.2, it might not be so much of an issue for you right now. But if you're a customer on Sitecore 8, 8.2, 9.x, then you may be looking to get some support, continued support for the right now. If there are features in 10.3 that are compelling business cases for you, you may want to start using those. Some of those new APIs and management tools, some of those features like the embeddable forms. Maybe you're an SXA customer and you want to start looking towards using headless SXA to make it easier to build out microsites and spin up new websites very quickly. Again, there's some nice features in there for you. If the other thing may be that you just don't know where you are in your composable journey right now. You kind of just need to figure things out, and you need to buy yourself some time to do some road mapping, to figure out what your composable journey looks like. An upgrade to 10.3 buys you some additional time.
And I think we can probably look at that with time here. So you were just talking about the life cycle. This kind of puts it onto a screen. And as you said, it ends up being kind of a buying time mechanism, which is not a bad thing. It gives you a good platform from which to deploy many of the things your enterprise needs digitally. And really, I mean, what you see from customers is, for those who might not use many of the packaged features that were in an XP, that might be a reason to look outward. But overall, when you look at this screen here, if you want to talk through the timing there for 10.3.
Yeah. So 10.3, the mainstream support from Sitecore is always 3 years, so that takes us to the end of 2025. Then if you need extended support, that takes you out to the end of 2028. That's a long time out. Right? They're 6 years out. So if you pay for that support, that will take you out there. If you're on 9.3, just be aware that mainstream support ends in just over 2 weeks. So again, beginning of next year, start planning to upgrade and get back into the mainstream support cycle. If the other thing to mention is you mentioned the package features within Sitecore XP particularly. If you are not using those package features and you're not using the analytics and you're not heavily using that personalization and you're not using all the EXN type features, you can shift across to Sitecore XN. That is a completely valid option. That's what we have been doing with a lot of our customers and clients and a lot of our projects, and we actively would recommend that if you're not using those other features. Apart from being a simpler code base and simpler platform to work with. It's also will cost you a lot less in the infrastructure and the hosting and the maintenance and the future upgrades as well. And there's no reason you can't use a platform like Sitecore XM and then use that as your foundation to build up your composable services. I could use Sitecore XM and bolt on a headless commerce system or a headless email campaign system or a SaaS-based search solution. You already use that. A lot of those features with things like search tags and their managed search capabilities. But you can use XM as your core content management system and then build out your composable solution around that.
Yeah, and there's two things you said there, which I want to hit on. One, they're not only the business case of moving, but the financial case. There could be some pretty substantial savings, assuming you're not using all of those features that were in XP, right? Yeah. There could be a pretty significant savings there going to XM. The second thing is the inability to use all the features doesn't necessarily mean a failure of your organization. There can also be the other side of it, where your organization might be using other solutions. You spoke of search, you spoke of email. They might be using other solutions already. So this gives them the ability to use those solutions and then not feel like you're paying for those solutions in the packaged system on top of it, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So let's start with this question here. Do I have other options with Sitecore? I think we started teasing some of this, but if we were to look at 10.3 as a customer, and it's a big update for us, what other things could I be looking at in the somewhat immediate, if I'm looking at 2023, what other options can I look at within Sitecore?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sitecore is very much a headless and cloud-based composable organization now. They have composable offerings for pretty much every part of the digital marketing stack that you would need. So the options are going to depend again on where you are coming from and where you want to go and what time frame that is within. If you are an older customer on something like Sitecore 8.2 and you're on a solution which is on an older technology like web forms, ASP.NET web forms, and you know that you need to rebuild your platform, you should start to roadmap that and plan your journey how to get to a cloud-based solution. It's going to make it much easier for the organization in the long term, and that's where the industry is heading. But if you're a customer who's on, an existing customer who's on XP and you're using all of those features and keep with this platform for right now. If you're a customer on, let's say you're on 9.3, you're an XP customer, you're not using those XP features like we just mentioned, you can start to, or to the extent that you would like to use them at the moment, then you can again shift across to Sitecore XM and then look at something like Sitecore Personalize and CDP, for example, to bring in those personalization features, bring those customer data integration points, and build your solution out from that, and then move towards being cloud ready. And in the future, you can shift across to XM Cloud. Right? That composable journey will take some time because it's not just replacing one bit of coding with another bit of coding. There is obviously business change and organizational change that needs to happen. But if you want to get to XM Cloud and you're on an existing XP XM customer who is not using something like JSS or headless services, then that's going to be a complete project rebuild, and that you're going to have to roadmap how long that rebuild is going to take and what that rebuild looks like. Is it something which is just one-for-one replacements, or are you actually going to take this opportunity to rethink your organization of your solution, your architecture, your website, your content, your strategy, right? There's a lot involved in just that road mapping session to begin with.
On that point, I think there's probably many enterprise customers who who come from a packaged all-in-one system. And there's probably a fair amount of anxiety when imagining how you're going to come out of that into a more composable future. On the flip side, you've been a part of road mapping sessions in this vein for a couple of years now. Are there any observations? Is there anything you can calm the nerves, having gone through these observations that are, positive elements of this, everyone working together on a solution? What have you thought about the road mapping sessions?
I think the road mapping sessions have been great. It really brings people together, and that's where 90% of the problem is just bringing people together to the table and getting them to talk and have a vision of what they want to do and where they want to get to and when they want to get there. I think a lot of times we get too much into the detail of projects and solutions and implementation that we start to lose focus on that long-term goal and the long-term strategy to get there. So this is why I think those road mapping sessions are important, just to get the important people within the business, within the teams together and to start to collaborate and to discuss. The other thing I'd mention is we know if you're a Sitecore customer, you bought Sitecore for a specific reason. You didn't buy it because it was just a CMS. You could have used WordPress if you just wanted a CMS. You wanted to use those marketing features. So we know there is a need and a willingness and a desire to use those features. So that does often make those discussions much easier because we will at least have a common ground that as a starting point.
Now, the last element, the last chapter of our discussion here is talking a bit more about Sitecore's next generation composable DXP. But I think this is a good slide as a transition to that because it really, pictures what we just talked about and what we're about to, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it's interesting that they call it the private cloud versus a public cloud SaaS, right? But it's essentially, it's giving customers the choice of how they would like their solutions hosted. I would like to host my solutions myself because I have very specific requirements. I have some very specific industry needs that I need to meet. I have some privacy concerns, or I need this right now because that's how my solution has been built up over the past decade or so. But in the future, maybe I'll go to a public cloud. So I think having that choice is great. It gives customers the flexibility to pick their path. It will allow customers the time to transition. It will give them some time to understand how the market is shifting and how the industry is shifting and how their teams need to reskill, retrain, rethink about how to architect those solutions and to work with those solutions.
It's almost like the next generation's the bike, and then the private cloud is kind of the bike with the training wheels, right? Like it allows you to learn the process and how the mechanics work. And then hopefully, though, it's not the same feeling as when the 6-year-old takes the training wheels off. It's a little more controlled.
It's always going to be. It's technology. It's always going to be a little bit wobbly, right?
Yeah.
That's why having when we were kids, we'd have our parents around to hold us while we wobble a little bit, right? So I'd say having a good partner in that sense with you on that journey is going to help and help stabilize those wobbles a little more than just going at it alone.
Well, keeping you on the road away from the curbs, right?
Yeah.
So lastly, this is the composable stack that was most recently announced at Symposium with some new products added to some other previously brought in composable products. We can see the grayed out managed cloud that we just discussed. Why don't you just give us a minute on this Experience Platform, Experience Manager with these composable elements and what they mean to the whole in 2023 and beyond with Sitecore?
Yeah, so the XM, Experience Platform, Experience Management, is the traditional private cloud we just talked about. And the hexagonal elements are Sitecore's composable and SaaS-based offerings. It's a whole stack. So it started off as Content Hub a few years back. The big focus has been on XM Cloud more recently, which is their CMS, SaaS-based CMS hosted solution. It does have some basic personalization features and things like that built in. Sitecore's made some big announcement during Symposium. So Sitecore Search was a new one, coupled with Sitecore Discover, which was a purchase of Reflection. Discover works extremely well with Order Cloud, a commerce-based search and recommendation engine. Search works better with content and websites. It does have some crawling features in there. Sitecore Connect was also a brand new feature. It's that low code, no code that you love, Matt. It will allow you to connect external systems with Sitecore's suite of products. You can just kind of drag and drop connectors to say, when this thing happens on this system, then make something else happen on some other system. Sitecore Send is Moosend. It's a replacement for EXM, essentially. Cloud-based email is a lot easier than having to scale EXM and figure it out yourself. And then we mentioned Personalizer and CDP. So Personalizer is a personalization engine, a great replacement for the features that were in Sitecore XP. And CDP is a customer data platform, allows you to ingest customer data from multiple different systems and then use that within your solution. Again, a great replacement for some of the analytics and personalization and the user data that was built into XP. So there is a good set of newer tools, replacement tools that you can use from Sitecore within the composable space. You can use some of them, you can use all of them. You could use them with XM Cloud, and you can use them with Sitecore XM. I probably not use them with XP so much because it's just paying for double features, but definitely a great transition for the future and gives you lots of options that are available. Pick one, pick them all. Sitecore plays. They're all API based, so Sitecore plays nicely with multiple other vendors as well.
Yeah, and we'll be having a webinar, I think, in a week where we're already starting to see outside headless API-based vendors already starting to connect with these systems, which opens up more possibility to compete or to make these services better even. So, yeah. So Cam, I don't know. Thank you for the time here. You know, you've been 10-time Sitecore MVP, go way back. The only thing I would say, give some closing words and maybe with all these announcements, how you feel about the trajectory with your history with Sitecore. Feels like things are kind of falling into place a little more right now.
Yep, absolutely. So obviously the big focus has been on all the big announcements, all the new composable, headless, shiny tools. The 10.3 release, it's not as big as the older traditional announcements that we've seen. I think it's a good thing right now. I think people do need just some stability, just some small micro changes. There's a lot going on, just enough already for people to wrap their heads around. So these small minor bug fixes, small enhancements, small little feature releases, I think will just allow people to kind of settle down a bit, get that support, think of what their long-term support strategy is going to be. And then these new features just aid and help with the longer-term strategy and the migration that people might have in mind.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I don't think we have other questions at this time, though. I imagine in the holiday season there might be some, Konobos webinar and chill happening later, and then we'll answer any questions that come through. We're always available on all the various social channels and on our website at konobos.com. So thank you all for watching.
Thank you, everyone.